Good evening, everyone. How are you? I'm really happy to be here today and thrilled to have a great crowd. Again, I've uh, just nice to see be in SF. I work out of the Bay Area, so again, it's always a pleasure to be in SF and talking to the Node audience and JavaScript crowd. And a little bit about myself. I work at AWS, Amazon Web Services. I work in search and specifically on open source, and have been working with Open Distro for Elasticsearch, as well as Elasticsearch and Apache Lucene, different parts of the stack. And today I'm going to talk about performance diagnostics with PerfTop, which is a client component written in Node, which works with the Elasticsearch cluster and helps you in understanding how your cluster is doing, whether your data is set up right, and different kinds of diagnostics. So we'll deep dive. And again, what's your preference? Would you like to do questions as we go along or at the end? At the end? All right. So we can do it at the end. And of course, please keep in touch if you have any questions later. Again, happy to answer them later. So again, I'm going to cover a few things and just wanted to be organized about it. First of all, talking about what challenge are we trying to solve, right? What is the problem we are trying to solve with PerfTop, which is a Node client? How can this component help? What is it? What are the features? And what we are doing on the open source project and how you can get involved, because it's a large space: analytics, big data, search, full text search. So again, getting involved in some of the components that are being built is always super useful. So how many of you actively use Elasticsearch today? All right, I know you were talking about it, so that's cool. Are you looking at it for search or analytics? Well, search. I heard someone. Okay, cool. But Elasticsearch, just a little bit of an overview, because many of you are kind of looking at it or exploring. It's a well-known distributed Java-based full-text search engine, and its underlying core is Apache Lucene. How many of you have heard about Apache Lucene? Many of you must be. It's an old project. It's a very well-known and very popular open source search library. And it forms the foundation for many of the search engines that are used commercially, as well as for solving big data problems. So Elasticsearch, which has grown in popularity over the last few years, provides a lot of support for real-time analytics, as well as search features, which are underlying, which are leveraged from the Apache Lucene engine that it sits on top of. And for example, if you do full text search, you have lots of different types of data, whether that's numbers that you're crunching from logs, or full text documents that you're looking at, or you're doing fuzzy text on multilingual data, or you're looking for auto completion on search. Again, there are lots of different features that Apache Lucene provides out of the box, and Elasticsearch does too. So one of the things that, again, in the Elasticsearch stack is that it's a complex stack. And when you are setting up an Elasticsearch cluster, you need to understand the configuration and the parameters of how you're setting this up, with the number of nodes, the kind of indices that you set up, the kind of sharding that you're doing. And that's a complex process, right? Unless you have a lot of knowledge, you've been working in search for a long time, it is something that you really need to deep dive into and learn well. Capacity planning, many of you run test or production clusters or use them as engineers. And this is an issue that everybody faces, whether you're doing analytics, big data, sets of any kind. You need to plan, what kind of storage are you going to allocate for the kind of data that you're handling real time? What kind of servers are you going to use? How many nodes are you going to use? What kind of settings do you need to provide for Java Virtual for JVMs, right? So what kind of indices do you want to provide for optimizing on your data and being able to search on it and get results fast? So there are lots of different configuration options in Elasticsearch, which make it quite an art to be able to master and configure well and have an optimal cluster. The other aspect that folks really struggle with when you're looking at configuration of Elasticsearch is that you want to know what were the changes in performance or in results that returned back, or did your indexes work well enough? Do they need to be optimized further? And really getting that kind of visibility when you tune your cluster, right? So that's something where the performance analyzer, which is a plugin that's available in Open Distro for Elasticsearch, provides to you. It monitors and watches the Elasticsearch cluster that you have for your search applications. And PerfTop is the client that works with it, which is node-based, and helps you visualize and track and monitor all the metrics for the different, diagnostics or configuration or different types of metrics that you're tracking. So again, diving a bit deeper into what it means in an Elasticsearch or a search world is that PerfTop, which is a Node.js client, uh, is a very lightweight tool, and you can actually run it in different platforms, whether that's a Mac environment or whether that's a Linux environment, and that's the beauty of having a Node client. But it lets you identify bottlenecks where system resources are consumed, and this is very important because it's expensive for different organizations to just have resources which are sitting idle, whether that's running in the cloud or whether that's on-prem. You want to optimize on how you're using your clusters and your system resources well. So identifying bottlenecks is very important in that whole process of understanding, how do you optimize your search engine. Um, Whether they are hot nodes, that is nodes which are in distress on a cluster, whether your indices are getting overloaded, are there operations which are consuming and just spinning off and not returning results in the time that you expect? Are there system resources that are maxed out, need to be scaled up? So these are all different types of examples of problems that you can run into while you have a Elasticsearch cluster. So it's very important to first of all identify them and then determine what's going on, right? Because even if you are doing application, a node application, you still want to understand how does your backend Elasticsearch engine respond to your node application, right? What kind of results is it giving back to you? Are these accurate? Are they on time? And these bottlenecks are related often to data, the kind of data workloads that you are throwing at it. Um, so it's important to understand where the problem lies and how can you optimize it. The PerfTop helps you do, again, understand and identify some of these bottlenecks by, getting the metrics and the kind of thresholds that the cluster is operating in. It helps you understand latencies, workload volumes, and then also analyze the metrics and determine the solution as to what you need to do in order to tune your cluster, tune your search setup, and be able to actually completely, get back the results you need within the SLAs that you're supporting. Say you have, terabytes or petabytes of data. How do you scale it up at that level and be able to return searches, right? Which are accurate, relevant, reliable, and also give you the results that you need. So PerfTop helps you analyze those metrics and determine the solution. And then you can take a decision on, should I increase the system resources that I need to, maybe the number of nodes, or the amount of memory, or the amount of disk space that needs to be there as a default, increase the number of shards that you are using for replication, number of nodes, and then visualize it. It's always, something that you need to understand real time. So moving on to, PerfTop, it's actually an SSH-based command line client. And you may say, hey, in this day and age, who uses command line clients and CLIs? But a lot of folks do. When you're working on large-scale clusters, it's super important to be able to run a standalone lightweight client where you can actually do a lot on a command line, right? Because you may be sitting in a production on the production box. You may be sitting on in a test configuration. So PerfTop enables you to watch, what's happening on the Elasticsearch cluster. It pulls the Performance Analyzer API. Now, the Performance Analyzer is a Java plugin which is sitting and watching an Elasticsearch cluster that you have, right? And PerfTop is talking to Performance Analyzer and constantly picking up data that the Performance Analyzer is providing and analyzing and generating visualizations. So you can actually see real-time dashboards for analyzing and watching your cluster, watching your nodes, watching your shards, and how they perform, and if you need to optimize your system resources over time. It's also pretty cool. It comes with a custom bunch of JSON templates that help you create dashboards and help you actually configure dashboards for watching your search cluster. So take a look at the code. It's all open source and it's on GitHub. And you can take this URL. Again, you can also catch up on the video later. But PerfTop provides a set of pre-configured dashboards, widgets that you can actually set up in a view of metrics that are useful to you. There are about more than 75 metrics that PerfTop tracks. And so that's a huge number of data points that you're getting for understanding the performance of your Elasticsearch cluster. You can have different kinds of visualizations on a dashboard. It could be tables, it could be bar graphs, it could be line graphs. And again, this is really lightweight. You can configure it, run with it, and be able to even modify it. It's open source. So if there's a particular graph that you need, which is not there, you can always build a template. And there's a lot of documentation on the project, so you can go and check it out and actually use it out of the box. PerfTop also, as I said, provides you the ability to customize the templates that you already have for dashboards out of the box. You can just copy one of the existing templates which are just JSON files, and you can just duplicate and modify it. So go check it out on GitHub, and there's lots of cool stuff you can do. There are lots of options that you can track, and also a lot of configuration in terms of setting up the graphs, setting up the charts, and visualizing the data you need. So I just want to touch upon the data flow at a glance, because this is just very high level, where I want to give you a perspective of what exactly is happening in terms of the data that you are flowing through an Elasticsearch or search cluster, and then how does Performance Analyzer, which is called the plugin here, and the PerfTop client look at it, right? So you have the user who is, through a web browser or other, or through APIs, basically interacting with a search cluster, which is Elasticsearch here, and the Performance Analyzer, which is referred to as the plugin, sits as another process that's watching the cluster all the time, right? So it's not running inside the Elasticsearch stack. It's a different process that's running. And then you have a reader process that reads the data and the metrics that are getting picked up live from the cluster itself. And then those metrics are analyzed and with the thresholds that you have configured as what works for your cluster, under normal conditions, analyzes that, and then chunks it out, which PerfTop pulls in and visualizes for you, right? So this is kind of the data flow, and just at very high level, you can take a look at the code as well as the documentation to understand more. Very simply, just wanted to call this out before I go into how you can get involved. It's very easy. You can use npm, our favorite package manager, or maybe not so much anymore, but you can use npm to just download PerfTop and go install it and play with it. So the future is bright for this project because Open Distro for Elasticsearch is a downstream distribution of Elasticsearch, and it has several components around the Elasticsearch stack, which are available as plugins. You can do alerting, you can do monitoring, security comes out of on this open source project, and you can even do performance metrics. There's a whole bunch of machine learning work also being done on the project. So again, please come and take a look at the code and join in. Some of the backlog items that are there on the PerfTop repo today, and you can go and take a look at that on GitHub, are things like writing a Kibana visualization, because Kibana is the UI that Elasticsearch uses. There are also other requests for visualizing a React app. So if any of you are looking at building out an app in React, you could totally go and write it and contribute it or work with us on it. A framework to ingest metrics and make them available for other sources. Like if you have a different visualization tool, you could pull the metrics from Performance Analyzer and be able to visualize that in the environment that you have set up for visualization, right? Then you can make API enhancements. The API is open. So again, please do take a look at the API. It's heavily documented. And you can also add APIs if you have specific ones that don't work for you, or you're looking for a different configuration or parameters that work. SSL improvements that we'd like to see. It's already has baseline SSL support, but like to see client-side certification, certificate validations, as well as supporting different kinds of certificate formats. So these are just some of the examples of requests that people have made, depending on the Elasticsearch cluster, the setup that they have. And additional metrics. That's always useful, right? Because there may be some metric that that's important to you that may not be available in this performance diagnostics plugin yet. So please take a look at the backlog. Getting involved in the project, it's a fully open source project. Everything is Apache 2 licensed. You can contribute in Node, in React, in JavaScript, as well as there are several components in Kotlin, as well as Java. So again, it's a full stack environment. And if you are passionate about a particular area like machine learning or performance or alerting or monitoring, you can always get involved in that area. And there's a lot of activity happening on the project. I'd like you to kind of take a look at some of these parts of the project. The code community is very active on GitHub at Open Distro for Elasticsearch, and there's a community meeting area where people usually file issues. If it's not specific to a particular component that is there right now, you can always go and file issues here in the community section. And it's very similar to what you do, for taking requests to get Node. You're interested in coming and speaking at SFNode. So it really works well in the code community, as you know. If you're interested in, you're an expert in search, or you'd like to become an expert, you can always track the discussions on our discussion forums on different topics. So take a look at the discussion, discuss.opendistrocommunity.dev. The project website has extensive amounts of documentation. We get a tremendous amount of documentation contributions too. So if you're looking at getting involved in an open source project is a good way of getting involved because it's easy. And if you're seeing something that you'd like to see, or you want to submit some sample code, or go and write up more visual documentation, please join in. Um, and then the PerfTop source code and the performance analyzer source code. Go take a look at it. There's lots to be done. This is a brand new project, and we'll continue to grow and build. There are a lot of contributors, who actually give us feedback, but we'd also like to see the community grow and have more developer contributions coming in on the project. And that's all I had to say today, but I would love to stay in touch. And if you have any questions, or you're looking to work on large, reliable, scalable open source projects, again, keep in touch. And here's our contact info. Go check out the code. Open source projects always run on, really deep diving and learning more about the code and the documentation. And thank you for the opportunity to chat with you today.